I live alone. I bought my house 3 years ago, a small 2-bedroom in a quiet suburb outside Columbus. Good neighborhood, friendly neighbors, the kind of street where people wave from their driveways, and nobody really bothers anyone. I had never felt unsafe there, not once, not until that night. It was a Wednesday in late January. I had been in bed since around 10, early for me, but I had a long week and I was exhausted. I was in that half-asleep state, where you're not quite dreaming, but not fully conscious either. At 2:14 in the morning, someone knocked on my front door. 3 knocks, slow, deliberate, not urgent, not the frantic knock of someone in trouble, just 3 steady, evenly spaced knocks. I sat up immediately. That kind of knock at that hour doesn't ease you awake. It pulls you out of sleep, fast and hard. I sat still in the dark for a moment and listened. Nothing after the 3 knocks. No voice, no movement outside, just silence. My phone was on my nightstand. I picked it up and opened my doorbell camera app. I had installed the camera about a year earlier, mostly for packages, and it covered a clear, wide-angle view of my front porch and the path leading to it. The porch was empty, nobody there, no one walking away, no car pulling out of my driveway. The motion-activated light on my porch hadn't even triggered, which meant whatever had knocked hadn't been close enough to the door to set it off. I sat there staring at my phone screen for a full minute. Then I told myself the most reasonable thing I could. Old houses make sounds. Pipes, wood settling, the occasional bang from something shifting. I had probably been half asleep and incorporated a random house noise into my waking brain as knocking. I lay back down. At 2:31 in the morning, it happened again. 3 knocks, exactly the same. Same pace, same weight, same spacing. This time, I was fully awake before the 3rd knock landed. I grabbed my phone and opened the camera before I was even sitting up. The porch was empty again, but this time the motion light had triggered, which meant something had been close enough to set it off. The camera had captured the activation timestamp, 2:31:08. The knocks had come at 2:31:09. Whatever had knocked was no longer on my porch by the time the camera caught the motion. I called 911. The officer arrived in about 12 minutes. He walked the full perimeter of my house with a flashlight, checked the backyard, the side gates, the detached garage. He found something in the narrow side passage between my house and the fence, a section of ground that stays soft because it doesn't get much sun. Footprints, 2 sets, one coming toward the front of the house, one going back the way they came. The prints going back were further apart than the ones coming in, like whoever it was had been moving faster on the way out. The officer told me the prints were fresh, made within the last hour or 2, based on how crisp the edges still were in the cold ground. He filed a report, suggested I make sure all my windows and door locks were solid, maybe look into a security system upgrade. He was professional and thorough, and I appreciated it. But here is the thing that has stayed with me since. He could not explain why the camera showed nothing. The motion light triggered, the footprints were there. Someone had been on that path close enough to knock on my door, but the camera, pointed directly at the front porch, captured no one. I have never found an explanation for that, and I have looked for one for 3 years. I had a full security system installed the following week. New locks, window sensors, everything. I still check my camera every night before I go to sleep. 3 knocks, 2 in the morning, nobody there. I still don't know what that was. I'm not sure I want to. I want clear about one thing before I tell this story. The man at my door said he had the wrong house, but he already knew my name. I was renting a small farmhouse in rural Vermont for 3 months, a remote work arrangement while I helped take care of my grandmother who lived nearby. The house was on a dirt road, surrounded by fields and tree lines on all sides. The nearest neighbor was about half a mile down the road. It was quiet and isolated in a way that I genuinely loved at first. I had been there about 6 weeks when this happened. It was a Friday evening around 9:30, not late, but fully dark outside. I was in the kitchen making dinner when I heard a knock at the front door. Not alarming on its own, people occasionally came by, the landlord, the mail carrier, once a neighboring farmer asking about a fence line. I wiped my hands and went to the door. I didn't open it right away. The house had no peephole, but there was a narrow window beside the door. I looked through it. A man was standing on my porch, mid-40s, heavy-set, wearing a canvas work jacket. He looked ordinary enough, but something about the way he was standing, very still, facing the door directly, made me not reach for the handle immediately. I called through the door and asked who it was. He said his name was Gary and that he was looking for someone. He gave a name, a woman's name I didn't recognize, said he thought she lived here. I told him through the door that I was renting the house and didn't know anyone by that name. He said, sorry, must be the wrong place. And then he said, and this is the part that changed everything. He said, sorry to bother you, Sarah. My name is Sarah. I had never met this man. I had never seen him before. My name was not on any mailbox, not on any listing I was aware of, not connected to that address in any public way I could think of. I did not respond. I stood completely still on my side of the door and listened. He didn't knock again. After about 10 seconds, I heard his footsteps move off the porch. I went to the side window and watched a dark truck sitting at the end of my driveway. He got in. The truck didn't move for almost 2 minutes. Then it drove away slowly down the dirt road. I called my grandmother. Then I called the local sheriff's department. A deputy came out and took a report. I described the man and the truck as best I could. The deputy was thorough and kind. He drove the road in both directions and found no vehicle matching the description parked anywhere nearby. He suggested I call if anything else happened and told me the area was generally very safe. I appreciated that, but it didn't help me sleep that night. I started asking around, carefully, without alarming anyone, about the house's history. The landlord was vague, but eventually mentioned that the previous long-term tenant had left abruptly. He didn't offer details. I didn't push. I moved out 4 weeks early. I've thought about how he knew my name many times since. I've come up with possible explanations. Social media, local talk, public records. None of them make me feel better, because none of them explain why a man with the wrong house would use the right name. The first time he knocked, I thought it was a mistake. The second time, I thought it was strange. The third time, I called the police. I was living in a mid-size apartment building in Portland. 4 floors, about 30 units. The building was well maintained, had a secure key fob entrance, and I had lived there for almost 2 years without any issues. My apartment was on the 2nd floor at the end of the hallway, corner unit. The end of the hall meant there was only one reason someone would be at my door. They were specifically coming to my apartment. No foot traffic, no passing by. The first knock came on a Tuesday night around 11:30. I was still awake, reading. 3 knocks. Polite, not urgent. I went to the door and looked through the peephole. A man I had never seen before was standing in the hallway. He looked to be in his 30s. He was holding what appeared to be a small paper bag. I asked through the door who it was. He said he had a delivery. I told him I hadn't ordered anything. He said the name on the order was my apartment number and showed the bag toward the peephole. I couldn't read anything on it. I told him he had the wrong apartment and didn't open the door. He stood there for another few seconds, just a moment longer than felt normal, then said, okay, and walked back down the hallway. I looked through the peephole until he disappeared around the corner. 3 nights later, Thursday, around midnight, 3 knocks again. Same pace, same weight. I went to the peephole, same man. No bag this time. He was just standing in the hallway, facing my door with his hands in his pockets. I didn't say anything. I just watched him through the peephole. He stood there for almost a full minute. Then he turned and walked back down the hall. I called the building manager immediately. She said she would check the entry logs to see how he was getting past the key fob door. She called me back 20 minutes later. The logs showed no unauthorized entry. Every entry that night was a registered resident's fob. Somebody had let him in. I pushed the building manager to pull the hallway camera footage. She did. The footage showed him entering the building behind a resident who held the door. Not suspicious enough for anyone to question in the moment. A man carrying nothing, following someone inside. It happens in every building. He had been in my hallway twice. He knew exactly which apartment was mine. I filed a police report. The officer who came was helpful. He took the description, noted the incidents, and told me that because no direct threat had been made, there wasn't much they could do immediately, but that the report would be on file if anything escalated. He told me to document everything, which I did. The third knock came 6 days later, Saturday, 1:15 in the morning. I didn't go to the door. I went straight to my phone and called 911, then texted my building manager. I watched through the peephole. He stood there for almost 3 minutes this time, just standing, facing my door, not knocking again after that first set of 3. Then he left. Officers arrived 7 minutes later. They caught him in the parking garage on the ground level, sitting in a car, engine off, in a spot not assigned to any resident. He was asked to leave and told that further appearances would result in trespassing charges. I never saw him again after that night. I moved out 2 months later anyway. Some things change a place for you permanently. The feeling of safety is one of them. Once it's gone, it's very hard to get it back. It's very hard to get it back.